Today we're diving into something I know you're super curious about, the origins of Wicked. And wow, you weren't kidding about going deep.
Oh, yeah.
A whole chapter from the untold origins of Wicked. From The Wizard of Oz to Maguire's masterpiece. Color me impressed.
It's always exciting to see such passion for a topic, and Wicked's backstory is definitely one worth exploring.
So our mission today is to uncover those surprising connections between The Wonderful Wizard of Oz, the time it was written in, and how that all led to Wicked. Lucky for us, we have our expert here who is incredible at finding those hidden links and explaining not just the what, but the why behind it all.
I'm happy to help connect the dots.
The chapter title itself, The Untold Origins of Wicked. From The Wizard of Oz to Maguire's masterpiece, kind of hints that Oz is more than just a children's story, doesn't it?
It really does. The Wonderful Wizard of Oz is deeply intertwined with what was happening in America at the turn of the 20th century. Imagine a country going through rapid industrialization, cities exploding in size, and all this political tension brewing. That's the world Baum was writing in.
That's the side of Oz I never considered. The chapter even mentioned that Baum's own mother-in-law was a major figure in the women's suffrage movement. Do you think that influenced his writing?
It's highly likely. Baum's mother-in-law, Matilda Joslyn Gage, was a powerful advocate for women's rights. It's easy to see how her activism might have shaped his portrayal of strong, resourceful female characters like Dorothy. She's not just swept along by events, she's driving her own story.
That makes you think about Dorothy in a whole new way, doesn't it? And speaking of powerful forces at the time, this chapter talked about the populist movement.
Yes, this is where it gets really interesting. For those unfamiliar, the populist movement was all about fighting for the rights of farmers and laborers. They saw big corporations and unfair economic practices as the enemy and pushed for change. It was a pretty tumultuous time in American politics.
So Baum was writing in the middle of all that. Do you think it seeped into his work? Maybe even The Wizard of Oz itself?
Scholars believe he was using The Wizard of Oz as an allegory, meaning he embedded symbols and metaphors that reflected the anxieties and hopes of that era.
Wait, so like a secret code within the story? That's fascinating.
Exactly. For example, some interpret the Tin Man who loses his heart as he becomes more machine-like as a symbol of the dehumanizing effects of industrialization. The Scarecrow, always doubting his intelligence, could represent the way American farmers felt undervalued. And the Cowardly Lion, who finds his bravery when it matters most, might be a subtle critique of the political leadership at the time.
Hold on, I need a minute to process this. So you're saying these characters aren't just whimsical creations, they're reflections of American society at the time.
It's a theory that holds a lot of weight. Now, layer onto that the fact that Baum was fascinated by technology. We see this in Oz's fantastical inventions, right?
Yeah, all those crazy contraptions are definitely a big part of Oz's appeal.
But it also reflects a deeper anxiety about technology's potential for deception and control. Think about the wizard himself. This all-powerful figure turns out to be a fraud, using technology to create an illusion of power.
He's basically a showman with smoke and mirrors enabled by technology.
Precisely. It makes you wonder, can technology be both wondrous and dangerous at the same time? Can it be used for both good and bad? These are questions Baum seems to grapple with in his work.
It's almost like he's holding up a mirror to society, showing both the promise and the potential pitfalls of progress. It makes you look at The Wizard of Oz in a whole new light.
It really does. And remember, Baum wasn't trying to recreate those dark, moralistic fairy tales that were common in Europe at the time. He wanted a uniquely American fairy tale, something filled with wonder and joy, what he called a story without heartaches and nightmares.
And you can definitely feel that optimism and hopefulness throughout The Wizard of Oz. It's all about self-discovery, friendship, and finding your way back home. But even with all the dazzling spectacle of Oz, Dorothy ultimately longs for Kansas.
And that focus on home is key in Baum's work. It goes beyond just a physical place. Home represents that feeling of belonging and security, something we all crave.
That makes so much sense. It's not just about bricks and mortar. It's about where you feel you belong. And that ties in beautifully with Wicked. Elphaba's journey is also about finding a place to belong, a place where she's accepted for who she truly is.
It's like Maguire took that thread from Baum and wove it into her own tapestry, building on the foundation he laid. She expands on the themes of self-discovery and challenges the traditional power structures, giving voice to a character often demonized, the Wicked Witch of the West.
It's brilliant. Maguire isn't simply retelling the story, she's giving us a completely new perspective. By exploring Elphaba's backstory, she challenges those simplistic notions of good versus evil.
And that resonates with audiences because deep down, we all want to understand the other, to question those easy narratives we're often presented with.
It's like she's saying, don't judge a book by its cover, especially when it comes to those we perceive as different.
Precisely. And by exploring Elphaba's backstory and motivations, Wicked encourages us to look beyond those surface judgments and seek a deeper understanding. It reminds us that everyone has a story, everyone has reasons for their actions.
And that even those labeled as wicked can have compassion, courage, and a yearning for acceptance.
Exactly. And this ties back to Baum's idea of creating an American fairy tale. He wanted to move away from those traditional European narratives where good and evil were clearly defined. He sought to create a world with more nuance, a world where characters could be both flawed and heroic. And Maguire clearly builds upon this foundation in Wicked, challenging those simplistic binaries and embracing the complexities of human nature.
That makes you wonder, doesn't it? Knowing the historical context and Baum's intentions, how do you now view the relationship between Dorothy and Elphaba? Is it just a straightforward clash between good and evil, or is there something more nuanced going on?
That's a great question. It's one that invites us to dig deeper and move beyond those simplistic labels. Remember, Baum was writing during a time of social and political upheaval, and his work often reflected those anxieties and hopes. So when we look at Dorothy and Elphaba, we could see them as representing different sides of this changing American landscape. Dorothy, the innocent farm girl, embodies traditional American values, while Elphaba, the outcast with extraordinary powers, challenges the status quo and fights against injustice.
So instead of a simple good versus evil dynamic, it's more like a clash between different perspectives, different ways of navigating a world in flux.
Exactly, and that complexity, that tension between opposing forces, is what makes their relationship so compelling. It mirrors the complexities of the world around us, where things are rarely black and white.
It's like we're seeing a reflection of our own societal struggles played out on the fantastical stage of Oz.
And that's the power of great storytelling. It allows us to grapple with complex issues, political, social, even personal, through the lens of imagination. We can explore these themes in a safe space, allowing for empathy and understanding without feeling overwhelmed by the real-world weight of it all.
It's almost like Baum and Maguire are giving us these tools to navigate the complexities of our own world. And that's what makes both The Wizard of Oz and Wicked so enduring.
Absolutely. They offer a timeless appeal, reminding us that even in fantastical worlds, the human heart, with all its contradictions and complexities, remains at the center of every story.
This has been such an eye-opening deep dive. I'm already seeing both The Wizard of Oz and Wicked in a whole new light.
It's been a pleasure unraveling these connections with you, and I hope our listener is feeling that same sense of discovery. It's fascinating how Maguire takes those seemingly simple characters from The Wizard of Oz and reveals their hidden depths. Glinda, for example, starts off as this bubbly, popular figure, but in Wicked, we see her journey of self-discovery,
Oh, totally.
her struggles with her own insecurities, and her evolving understanding of what true friendship means.
And that's what makes her transformation so compelling. She goes from this somewhat shallow character to a complex woman who learns to stand up for what she believes in, even if it means challenging those in power.
Exactly. And this idea of challenging authority is a thread that connects both The Wizard of Oz and Wicked. Dorothy challenges the wizard, exposing his fraudulent nature, and Elphaba rebels against the corrupt regime of the wizard and Madame Marble. It speaks to this universal human desire to question those in power and fight for what's right.
It's almost like these stories are giving us permission to question authority, to think for ourselves, and not just blindly accept what we're told.
Absolutely, and that's particularly potent in Wicked. By humanizing the Wicked Witch, Maguire forces us to confront our own prejudices and challenge the simplistic labels we often place on people.
It's like she's saying, don't judge a book by its cover, especially when it comes to those we perceive as different.
Precisely. And by exploring Elphaba's backstory and motivations,
Yeah.
Wicked encourages us to look beyond those surface judgments and seek a deeper understanding. It reminds us that everyone has a story, everyone has reasons for their actions.
And that even those labeled as wicked can have compassion, courage, and a yearning for acceptance.
Exactly. And this ties back to Baum's idea of creating an American fairy tale.
Yeah.
He wanted to move away from those traditional European narratives where good and evil were clearly defined. He sought to create a world with more nuance, a world where characters could be both flawed and heroic. And Maguire clearly builds upon this foundation in Wicked, challenging those simplistic binaries and embracing the complexities of human nature.
It's amazing how these stories, even though they're set in a fantastical land of witches and wizards, can still teach us so much about ourselves and the world we live in.
That's the magic of good storytelling, isn't it? It can transport us to another realm while simultaneously holding up a mirror to our own reality.
It makes you wonder if Baum, writing over a century ago, could have ever imagined the lasting impact his work would have, and how Maguire would build upon his legacy to create this whole new phenomenon with Wicked.
It's a testament to the enduring power of these themes. The search for identity, the courage to challenge authority, and the complexities of good and evil. These ideas resonate across generations, making both The Wizard of Oz and Wicked timeless classics.
This deep dive has been such a revelation. It's like peeling back the layers of an onion, uncovering these hidden depths and connections I never would have seen on my own.
I'm so glad you feel that way. It's been a true pleasure exploring these ideas with you. And for you listening, I hope this deep dive has sparked some new insights and maybe even inspired you to revisit these stories with fresh eyes.
Before we wrap up, I have to ask, knowing all this, how do you think Wicked changes the way we understand The Wizard of Oz? Does it enrich the original story, challenge it, or maybe even offer a completely new perspective?
That's an excellent question to ponder. I think it does all of those things. It adds depth and nuance to the characters we thought we knew, like Linda and the wizard himself.
Right.
It challenges the simplistic narrative of good versus evil, encouraging us to question our assumptions and embrace the gray areas. And ultimately, it offers a new perspective on the events of The Wizard of Oz, allowing us to see the story through the eyes of someone who was demonized in the original tale.
It's like Wicked is inviting us to have a conversation with The Wizard of Oz, to re-examine its themes and messages through a contemporary lens.
Exactly. And that's what makes exploring these connections so rewarding. We gain a deeper appreciation for both stories and a richer understanding of the timeless human experiences they explore.
Well, I don't know about you, but I'm ready to revisit both The Wizard of Oz and Wicked with all these new insights in mind.
Me too. It's amazing how much depth and complexity there is to uncover, even in stories we think we already know so well.
A huge thank you to our expert for guiding us through this incredible deep dive. And to you, dear listener, thank you for sending us this fascinating chapter and trusting us to explore it with you. Keep those sources coming. We can't wait to see where our next deep dive takes us.